There are 76 days until the midterm elections, and tensions between the Trump administration and state election officials are spilling out into the open. Donald Trump has appointed election deniers to powerful positions all across the government, while at the same time dismantling agencies that have played critical roles in keeping past American elections secure. Just take a look at what's happening right now with something called the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. You'll know it as CISA. Its job is to protect American cyber and physical infrastructure and to defend America from outside interference, whether it be from foreign nations or hostile groups. Now, usually, CISA also partners with states to make sure that American elections are safe and secure from interference. It informs local officials about the threat environment ahead of each election and helps defend their systems from getting hacked. But the relationship between CISA and the states has disintegrated under the second Trump administration. The reason why starts with this man, Chris Krebs. Chris Krebs was a longtime Republican. He was appointed as director of CISA by Donald Trump and unanimously confirmed by the Senate in 2018. He was the one in charge of CISA during the 2020 elections. And as Trump began spreading the big lie, trying to sow doubts about the integrity of that year's elections, Krebs pushed back hard. 9 days after the election, CISA issued a statement that contradicted basically every bogus claim that Trump was making about the results of the presidential race. It declared that the 2020 election was, quote, the most secure in American history. It added, quote, that there is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was compromised in any way. Just 5 days after that statement was published, Donald Trump fired Chris Krebs. Today, the agency is a shell of its former self. It hasn't had a permanent director since Donald Trump returned to the White House. It's a really important agency. It's faced cuts to its staff and to its programs. The Trump administration has even pulled funding that was designated to help states keep each other informed about election-related threats. Meanwhile, Trump's attacks on the election continue. Last year, Trump revoked Krebs' security clearance and ordered federal agencies to investigate him and to review CISA's work under his leadership. This guy's a lifelong Republican, by the way. State election officials across the country are being subjected to that same kind of hostility today. The Department of Justice sent letters to state election officials earlier this summer, warning them that they could face criminal charges if non-citizens are found to have voted in their state. The Homeland Security Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, said that the Trump administration could pull federal funding if states don't make the changes that the federal government is demanding of them. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that some of these election officials are pushing back as the Trump administration makes a half-hearted effort to help states in the final weeks before voting for the midterms begins. On Monday, CISA held an election security call with officials across the country, and it didn't go well. Participants told VoteBeat, a publication that specializes on election issues, that acting CISA director Nick Anderson did not offer any real support to the states. Instead, frustrations boiled over, and at least one Secretary of State, Arizona's Adrian Fontes, confronted CISA officials and told them, quote, I don't trust you. Joining me now is the Arizona Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes. Secretary Fontes, thank you for being with us. You are all important. All of you Secretary of States who administer elections are important. But, boy, you've been at ground zero of the nonsense involving Donald Trump in the 2020 election, which I can't believe continues to this day, 6 years later. But you actually need collaboration with your fellow states and the federal government to ensure that elections run smoothly and consistently across this country. You've told me before you haven't been getting that from the federal government.
Well, we haven't been getting it from the federal government. We've been getting it from each other at the state level. And that meeting that happened because the National Association of Secretaries of State, which is the oldest such association in the country, is kind of the great convener. It's a bipartisan association where we have these open and robust, honest and direct conversations. Somebody in that conversation mentioned some of the stuff that I had to say to the press, and I've confirmed it because I think it's important that folks understand why it is that at this very late moment, it's wholly insufficient. And it's an abandonment of the duties that the Department of Homeland Security and CISA has to come in and say they want to help, because they haven't. They have reduced all of their assistance that they've been giving us for years during the first Trump administration and during the Biden administration. They've reduced, as you indicated, not just their funding and their coordination, but all of their assistance. And we've had to really kind of scramble around, but we've done well across the country. Republican and Democratic secretaries of state, our individual state departments of Homeland Security, in conjunction with, like in Arizona, our National Guard and the Arizona Counterterrorism Information Center, and many of our partners have kind of shored up our election infrastructure without CISA and without the federal government. But here's the biggest problem that presents. CISA and the Department of Homeland Security no longer have our eyes and ears giving information to them because they've abandoned us. So we have a weakened capacity to respond nationally from the federal government because they have totally ignored and abandoned their duties to us.
Now, why is that? Because Donald Trump claims to be awfully concerned about dangers to our voting system and makes constant claims about how unsafe it is and how there's all sorts of non-citizens voting and all that stuff. So what's the goal? What are they trying to achieve?
Well, he can claim in one hand and spit in the other and see which one fills up first. The bottom line is this. I don't know what exactly their goals are other than to try to pick their own voters. And we've seen it with executive orders trying to pretend like you can just change the rules of the Postal Service at the last second. The Department of Justice demanding, illegally, by the way, complete voter rolls, including private information that would be illegal for us to turn over from the states to the federal government, and all kinds of other stuff. The interference is absolutely, I hate using the word unprecedented because that's all this administration seems to have been. It's a real problem when you have the chief executive of the federal government trying his darndest to interfere with our elections and attempt to select his own voters. But here's the important thing, and I think it's really, really, really critical that folks realize this. Our elections administrators across this country have the grit and persistence to get through this challenge like we've gotten through challenges throughout American history. We've survived the Civil War and had elections. The Spanish flu and COVID-19, we've had elections. The flooding in North Carolina, the fires in Lahaina, all kinds of emergencies have happened, natural disasters, man-made issues, and we have always had our elections. We will continue to do so. We are the folks who represent the best in America, and we will continue to do so no matter what happens coming out of the White House, whether or not we've got cooperation from CISA or the Department of Homeland Security.
When you look at the states that Donald Trump targeted in his challenges against the 2020 election, your state, Michigan, Georgia, Pennsylvania, you all audit your elections. You all come up with statistics and numbers. You all know exactly how many non-citizens attempt deliberately or accidentally to vote and how many actually do vote. In many cases, in the very, very, very few cases where that occurs, if it's not deemed to be an accident, people are prosecuted. There's no actual failure of the system. This whole concept, Darlene Graham said this in her debate, that she believes as one of her top three priorities that only citizens should vote in America. Fundamentally, only citizens vote in America.
That's absolutely true. And you've mentioned states that have Republican and Democratic secretaries of state who are chief election officers. Look, all of the folks who run our elections would have to be in on this incredible, what was the old phrase, vast conspiracy to make anything like what has been alleged happen. And it's just flat out not true. And here's why we know it's not true. Let's just take the allegation of illegal voters. OK, where's the list? We've never had anyone from this administration or anywhere else submit a list of hundreds of thousands of illegal voters. Well, if you're asserting a fact that there are these illegal voters, where's the list? I feel like one of those old ladies in the old Wendy's commercials. Where's the beef? What in the world do you have to present for reals as actual evidence? On the other hand, let me give you an example of something my administration did in January. We submitted 28 cases to the Attorney General for prosecution because we had folks doing the wrong things. For example, voting out of Arizona and then voting in Arizona in the same election. That's illegal. And so we follow the law. We prosecute where it's important to prosecute. We investigate all of these cases. And if, in fact, there are the very vanishingly rare cases of non-citizens that have voted, 99% of the time, it's an accident or it was unintentional somehow. The bottom line is this. American elections are secure, they are accountable, they are fair, no matter what anybody accuses, particularly if they make those accusations without any evidence.
And just to underscore how vanishingly rare, 28 cases you referred for prosecution. What's the denominator there out of how many people who vote in Arizona?
Millions. I mean, you're talking about, I think in that particular election, we were somewhere near 4.5 million voters, maybe slightly less than that. But the bottom line
somewhere,
is,
let's be conservative and call 4 million. 28. Okay. So this
Sure.
is probably not the crisis it appears to be.